Boker Tov, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Hope you had a wonderful Chag and a good weekend, a good Shabbat. As you know, the past number of months have been very difficult and challenging for our community, for our country, for the world in certain respects that have to do with health and the dangers that come with that. Over the course of the past week, the United States, our country, has been reminded of serious challenges within our community regarding racism, law enforcement, and it is important as we return to school this week that we spend time this morning. It is the first thing to which we should turn our attention as we come back to school this week. We will begin, whenever we have a gathering, we start with a parak of Tehillim. The Tehillim is still praying for the safety, the health of all. It is also praying for this new dimension of the violence that our country is experiencing at this time. We will start with a parak of Tehillim. At the end, we will recite a tefillah l'shlom hamalchut for our government and a prayer for their wisdom. Please join me in reciting parak Kuf Chaf Aleph. Shir Malot Esa Einai Leharim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Ezri Me'im Adonai Yosei Shamayim Aretz Al Yitein Lamot Raglecha Al Yanum Shamrecha Hinei Lo Yanum Belo Yishan Shomer Yisrael Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Tzilecha, Al Yad Yeminecha, Yomam HaShemesh Lo Yakeka, V'yareach B'layla, Adonai Yishmarcha, Mikol Ra, Yishmor Es Nafshecha, Adonai Yishmor Tzesla U'Borecha, Me'ata V'yad Olam. Last week, May 25th, George Floyd, an African-American man, died in Powderhorn, a neighborhood south of downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota. While George Floyd was handcuffed, while he was lying face down on a city street during the arrest, Derek Chauvin, a Minneapolis police officer, kept his knee on the right side of Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. 2 minutes and 53 seconds of which occurred after Floyd had become unresponsive. That is according to the criminal complaint that has been filed against Chauvin. As difficult as it is, it feels important for us to look at the image together. The incident was recorded on the smartphones of several bystanders and later circulated on social media. The arrest was made after Floyd allegedly attempted to use a $20 bill in a deli, which an employee suspected was counterfeit. Police stated that Floyd physically resisted after being ordered to exit his vehicle before the video was filmed. After Floyd's death, demonstrations and protests in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area were initially peaceful on May 26th. Later that day, it became violent as windows were smashed at a police precinct, 2 stores were set on fire, many stores were looted and damaged. There were skirmishes between demonstrators and police, which then involved tear gas and rubber bullets. Floyd's death has been compared to the 2014 death of Eric Garner. We gathered as a school back at that time as well. Garner, an unarmed Black man, repeated, "I can't breathe," 11 times after being placed in a chokehold by a New York police officer during an arrest in Staten Island. Derek Chauvin was arrested last week on May 29th and charged with 3rd-degree murder and 2nd-degree manslaughter, which basically means murder without intent to kill. This follows another incident earlier this month where the video of the killing of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery that occurred back in February in Georgia went viral. It took more than 2 months and the release of that video before authorities filed murder charges. These events have generated enormous anger around the United States and the African American community and beyond. It is our duty and responsibility to stop, to care, to pray for peace, for kindness, and for change, a few different kinds of change. It is very difficult to know exactly what to say, what to hope for under circumstances like these. The problems are so deep, the misunderstanding so profound, and the violence so destructive. In searching for what to think, what to say, how to absorb all of this, I came across a speech that the rapper Killer Mike delivered in Atlanta. The whole speech was 8 minutes long. I'm sharing 5 of them with you this morning. Please, please listen to every word.
I didn't want to come, and I don't want to be here. I'm the son of an Atlanta City police officer. My cousin is an Atlanta City police officer, and my other cousin, East Point police officer. And I got a lot of love and respect for police officers, down to the original 8 police officers in Atlanta that even after becoming police had to dress in a YMCA because white officers didn't want to get dressed with niggers. And here we are 80 years later. I watched a white officer assassinate a black man. And I know that tore your heart out. And I know it's crippling. And I have nothing positive to say in this moment because I don't want to be here. But I'm responsible to be here because it wasn't just Dr. King and people dressed nicely who marched and protested to progress this city and so many other cities. It was people like my grandmother, people like my aunts and uncles who were members of SCLC and NAACP, and in particular, Reverend James Orange, Mrs. Alice Johnson, and Reverend Love, who we just lost last year. So I'm duty bound to be here to simply say that it is your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy. It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. It is time to beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voting booth. It is time to hold mayoral offices accountable, chiefs and deputy chiefs. Atlanta is not perfect, but we're a lot better than we ever were, and we're a lot better than cities are. I'm mad as hell. I woke up wanting to see the world burn down yesterday because I'm tired of seeing black men die. He casually put his knee on a human being's neck for 9 minutes as he died like a zebra in the clutch of a lion's jaw. And we watch it like murder porn over and over again. So that's why children are burning to the ground. They don't know what else to do. And it is the responsibility of us to make this better right now. We don't want to see one officer charged. We want to see 4 officers prosecuted and sentenced. We don't want to see targets burning. We want to see the system that sets up for systemic racism burnt to the ground. And as I sit here in Georgia, home of Stevens, Georgia, former vice president of the Confederacy, white man said that law, fundamental law, stated that whites were naturally the superior race, and the Confederacy was built on a cornerstone. It's called a cornerstone speech. Look it up. The cornerstone speech that blacks would always be subordinate. That officer believed that speech because he killed that man like an animal. In this city, officers have done horrendous things and they have been prosecuted. This city's cut different. In this city, you can find over 50 restaurants owned by black women. I didn't say minority, and I didn't say women of color. So after you burn down your own home, what do you have left but char and ash? CNN? Ted did a great thing. I love CNN, I love Cartoon Network, but I'd like to say to CNN right now, karma's a mother. Stop feeding fear and anger every day. Stop making people feel so fearful. Give them hope. I'm glad they only took down a sign and defaced a building and they're not killing human beings like that policeman did. I'm glad that they only destroyed some brick and mortar and they didn't rip a father from a son. They didn't rip a son from a mother like the policeman did. When a man yells for his mother in duress and pain and she's dead, he is essentially yelling, please God, don't let it happen to me. And we watch that. So my question for us on the other side of this camera is, after it burns, will we be left with charred, or will we rise like a phoenix out of the ashes that Atlanta has always done?
In just a few brief minutes, Killer Mike said a lot. He sharply articulated a series of crucially important things. And here's the first crucial thing for me. I never heard of Killer Mike before yesterday. And to me, on any other day, he would have been another rapper, someone who makes music that I don't like. Probably someone I would put in a box, label in a certain way. Yesterday, I sat with humility and with empathy and just listened to this man. And I listened again. Here stood a person who has law enforcement in his blood, family members who themselves have served as policemen, a person who clearly expressed his want to support law enforcement, and at the same time experiences such anger at law enforcement. Someone who's able to understand why people become violent when they don't know what to do, but also refuses to excuse violence. Someone who loves Atlanta and loves America, and at the same time is so angry at white America while rejecting the violent response that he saw on the streets. Someone who knows much more intimately and painfully than I or any of us knows the challenges of race in America, and someone who stands up to try to take responsibility. I am no expert on race relations in America. There are faculty members on this Zoom who know the issues much better than I do. And I know that because I don't know it firsthand, because what I know is from a distance, that the first thing I must do is listen, to watch, and to try to understand, and to do so with humility, with empathy, with care, with concern. We have to make time to care. And that is actually the first takeaway for me from listening to his words. Make time to care and experience it with empathy. Don't just pick a side. Make time to read, to know, and to care. But the second thing he talked about was responsibility. And he expressed responsibility in terms of himself and his community. He spoke to the rioters and talked to them about responsibility. And he spoke to us as relative outsiders. And I want to highlight the three things that he said. About himself, he said, I don't want to be here, and I have nothing positive to say, but I am responsible to be here, so I am here. I think his words speak for himself in terms of his own, where he is and where he needs to be. He also spoke about the duty of those around him He said, "It is your duty not to burn your own house down, to take revenge on your enemy. Fortify your own house. Make it a house of refuge." That is a musar that every person can and should take. And then he spoke to the rest of us, and he used a term that I had not heard before, but I won't forget. Murder porn. What a powerful image. Caring and watching, it's not important to see that video because it's interesting, because, wow, did you see what happened? Wow, it's gone viral. It is important to see, but you can look at it as murder porn. A human being died because of undue violence, and we should be humbled in the face of that. And finally, in his way, he spoke about democracy. Use your voice. The way he said it, beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voters' booth. Beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voters' booth. It's like a pasuk that needs a drasha. It's like, beat up, yeah, not with your hands, not with fire, through democracy, do what you can to make change. And that is something that we need to internalize and think about. As American Jews, we should never, ever take the freedom and opportunity that we have been granted in the United States for granted ourselves. We must remember that every person is created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. As we have prayed over the course of our history that people recognize our rights, our decency, our dignity, we must care, stand up, even fight to ensure the dignity of every American. I'll close. A friend of mine told me yesterday that he went to ride his bike in Central Park. There were 2 police cars patrolling, slowly driving across the park next to him at the same pace that he was riding his bike. He was biking, they were slowly rolling along. They looked, in his mind, glum, kind of sad. And in an attempt to engage them, he said, "Want to race?" The officer driving the car looked at him and said, "Not today, not today." He told them he understood, and he said, "Thank you for your service." It was a sad day for those officers. These have been sad and angry days for African Americans. These are sad days for America. Today in your history classes, you will have opportunity to learn about some of the challenges of racism in America. Later this week, we'll learn some important texts in Limudei Kodesh classes as well. And every day, read the paper, watch the news, talk to your friends, and pray, daven, however you feel about this. And it is complex. You should daven that the wounds that have been reopened, should heal, and that the leaders of our states and our country should be granted the wisdom to lead us there. We will conclude this morning with the Tefillah, L'Shlom HaMalchut, praying for the wisdom of our leaders. I ask Millie Helft to lead us.
Hanutin shual l'mlachim u'memshala l'nesichim, malchuto malchut kol olamim. Habotei et David avdo mecher ra'ah, hanotin b'yam derech u'bamayim azim netiva, hu yivarech et hanasi ve'et mishnehu, ve'et kol sarei hamedinot ha'ilu. Melech malchei hamlachim berachamav yechayim v'yishmerim, mikol tzaravi agon v'nezek yatzilim, v'yitin b'libam u'balev, kol yoatzehem v'sharehem, Lasot tovot imanu v'im kol Yisrael achinu, b'yimehem u'b'yaminu, tivasha Yehuda, v'Yisrael yishkol lavetach, u'val etzion goel, v'chein yehi ratzon v'nomar amen.
Thank you, Millie. Have a good day, everyone.